I really wish they'd invent mugs that you can't dip biscuits in, because it seems sort of what I'm doing at the moment. Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. If you're new here, I'd love for you to subscribe because I post up to 3 videos per week all about parenting, motherhood, breastfeeding, or you know, a few cleaning videos here and there. So if you like that sort of thing, please don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you enjoy it at the end. In today's video, I want to talk all about Harry's birth story and labour story. I know these are quite popular on YouTube and I really wanted to share mine because I think, you know, I've had a bit of an experience now with labours and deliveries. And Harry was probably my best one so far, so I wanted to share it with you today. Harry was born on the 12th of January this year. I went into labour on, I think it was the same day, the 12th of January. Around 8 o'clock in the morning, I woke up ready for the day. I think I was 5 days overdue at this point. So I was getting very fed up, very big, and yeah, I just wanted over with it. I went downstairs and luckily my sister was staying for the weekend because she knew I was overdue and she thought, you know, there was a chance of me going into labour. And due to obviously being on my own most of the time, she wanted to be here for me so I wasn't lonely. And, you know, I didn't want to panic that I had no one around me to be able to help me with the kids and get me to hospital. So I went into labour about 8 o'clock in the morning. I went to the toilet and that's when I had this like sudden pain. And I never experienced this before because all my labours had been obviously gradual like they usually are. I did the business, wiped, and noticed that I'd lost most of my cervical show. So that's when I called my sister in and I said, Meg, come on, like I think I'm in labour. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, finally, 5 days, I'm finally going into labour. A bit disappointed though because Alfie and Holly were both born on the 11th of the month and Harry missed it by 1 day, so he kind of ruined the whole thing. But never mind, I still love him. And that's when I contacted my partner at the time and shouted peaches down the phone at him. Whoever's watched, what's the film called? Ice Age. When she screams peaches and just tell her partner that she's going into labour, and that's what our code was, peaches. So I screamed that down the phone and he said, oh really? And I said, yes, you need to come here quick. He does still live in Bournemouth, so it takes about around 2 hours to get here. So obviously I was in a bit of a panic hoping that he'd be here on time. So luckily he made it. He was in here within an hour and a half. And yes, my labour was very sporadic with Harry. My 2 other pregnancies with Alfie and Holly, my labours were very gradual, so I kind of knew when I was in labour. I could time the contractions well, but with Harry it was really strange. I was going from like every 7 minutes I'd get a contraction to every 4 to every 1. Then it went back to 8 minutes and it was very sporadic, so I never really knew how far along in labour I actually was. So it was quite slow, but the pain started extremely quickly. I didn't have any kind of build up to the pain. It was just sudden and it was just constant pain. Although I was very good with the pain wasn't, you know, extremely bad. I wasn't screaming or anything like that. I don't know if it's because it's my third, perhaps I've kind of learned how to breathe through it and perhaps I'm more susceptible to the pain. But it wasn't even that bad, but it was definitely more painful than it would be if it was kind of gradual, if that makes any sense. But anyway, because it was so sporadic, I thought I'd go for a walk. I went to the shop round the corner, and as I was walking I was getting like contractions and they seemed to speed up more when I was more active, which is obviously a good thing. So we went to the shop and I was having contractions in the shop and everything, and that's when I decided to come home. I kind of sat on my bed for a while. I had a hot water bottle on my vagina. I did because it hurt, and then I had my back massaging thing on my back, so that went on for probably about an hour. I mean, the thing is, it was around 8 AM and this kind of went on till at least about 1, I'd say, like the pain. And I just kind of breathed through them, you know, every time they came I just breathed through, turned my little TENS machine on, and I had my hot water bottle. So that kind of went on for a long time. It was quite a long labour, to be honest. So around 3 o'clock is when they started getting a bit more intense. So I was kind of worrying, thinking, you know, the contractions weren't regular, but the pain was getting worse. So I thought, oh, perhaps, you know, it's just a bit sporadic. So that's when I decided perhaps we should call the maternity unit. So I called the maternity unit and I said, I think it was for the second time because I did call them previously, like when I had my show. So I called them again, well, my ex-partner did, and he said, Laura's in labour, her contractions are very sporadic, they're not regular, but the pain is getting quite intense and she has been in labour for a few hours now. It is her 3rd baby, and like my midwife kind of warned me to definitely be prepared with a 3rd baby because they can come very quickly. Which I kind of had in my head, that that's why I was so worried about this time. With him living so far away, I was worried that the baby would come very, very quickly and he'd miss the entire thing. So when the labour was kind of dragging on, I thought, oh, surely it's, you know, it's not going to be that quick. It can't be because I've been in labour for hours. But anyway, I decided to go into the hospital, which is, for me, the John Radcliffe here in Oxford. And before I was leaving, I was saying goodbye to Alfie and Holly. Obviously, it was very emotional because I did have a feeling I'd stay in hospital. I really hoped I wouldn't do, but I worried that I'd go in and never come out, like, for weeks because because I think I just panicked. I want to be at home with my kids. But as I was saying goodbye to my sister, I had this push and I really panicked then, because I thought, oh geez, it takes about 20 minutes to get to the hospital. I really hope I'm not going to give birth in the car.
Are we thinking maybe we should have called an ambulance?
So I said goodbye to my sister and like thanked her for having the kids, got in the car and drove all the way there. But on the way there, I pushed a couple of times in the car and I was really panicking. I think I said once, during contraction, I'm gonna give birth in this car, because I generally thought I was gonna have to like give birth on my own with him driving. I get to the hospital with a baby in my arms. So luckily that didn't happen. We got to the hospital around 3 o'clock or 3:15, went to the maternity unit, and that's when, I think it was in the corridor, I was having quite a long contraction. It was very like, I'd say it probably for about a minute. It was very long. And at this point I kind of pushed again, and a midwife came out of the ward and she said, are you pushing? And I said, yeah, I am. I've been pushing like a couple of times, like on the way here. So I was in a bit of a panic at this point, and that's when she said, okay, sit down. Oh no, I had to go take a urine sample because they kind of test your blood sugars, the sugars in your urine, sorry. So I went to the toilet, did my wee sample, and that's when I came back and noticed my partner at the time sat in the waiting room. And I said, what are you doing? He said, they've been told to wait. I said, what do you mean we're told to wait? I've been pushing. Surely we shouldn't wait now. Like that's, anyway. So finally we got took to like an examination room where she examined me, and the contractions were still quite bad at this point. They were not regular. They were probably every about 4 minutes, but the pain was quite intense. And she examined me and said, oh, you're about 8 to 9 centimeters. And I thought, oh, that explains it then. That's why I'm pushing. And that's when I pushed again when the midwives came in to take me to the delivery ward. They wanted to take me to like the midwifery unit, which is just midwife led. So there's no like, you know, machines or anything like that. It's quite a relaxed environment. But at this point I pushed and a bit of my waters broke, and that's when they knew that the baby was coming extremely quickly. So that's, at this point, my whole kind of plan in my head about giving birth in a lovely like maternity in a midwife led unit kind of went out the window, and I was rushed to a main delivery ward. So we went into the room, went onto the bed, and the only kind of position, because I think he was coming so quickly and his head was practically, you know, not hanging, but any mums who've given birth, you'd know that when the baby's head's there, you can kind of definitely feel it. You can't exactly close your legs, so it's kind of just like that. So I was on the bed and I kind of held the bed upright, and my bum was kind of that way. So I was in that position and I was in the delivery ward for 4 minutes. I think I could probably count the amount of pushes I actually had, probably about 5 pushes. And he arrived. He was in my arms. He was absolutely lovely and so small. He was £6.10 when he was born. He was kind of a bit bigger than Holly, because Holly was £6.2, but Alfie was £7.3. So he was a little bit dinky, which was just so cute. When he was first born, I'll go into kind of details about this. When he first came out, I noticed that he was quite purple, and I kind of, obviously because I gave birth, sat upright, I pulled him up and I held him, and I noticed he wasn't breathing properly. He was kind of like choking a little bit, and that's when I said to the midwife, like, please can you take him, he's not breathing. And they were like, no, he's fine, rubbing him with the towel. I said, no, take him, he's not breathing. So they quickly took him, and that's when it all went a bit crazy. They had to push the emergency button. They had a little resuscitating table come in, and that's when they kind of put an oxygen mask on him. And at this point, I was still a bit delirious because I'd had gas and air. Yeah, they were resuscitating him, and I kept looking at my partner at the time and being like, what's going on? And he was like, it's fine, don't worry, like, he'll be fine. That's when he got wheeled off. They took him into the high dependency unit at John Radcliffe Hospital, and that's when I said for his dad to go with him because I didn't want him to be on his own. I think it was, we found out that basically they took him away, and he was struggling to breathe at first because he came so quickly down the canal, as they call it. I think that's what it's called anyway. He came so quickly that he swallowed so much fluid on the way down that he was struggling to breathe, and he kind of swallowed a lot of it. He had a lot of bruising all over his face because he came so quickly. I think he kind of hit the bed as well. I don't know if the midwife grabbed him, or I think he kind of slid on the bed. I'm not sure if it kind of came like face first onto the bed, but he was covered in like bruises and little speckles where the bruises were. But apart from that, he was lovely, bless him. He was fine after that. And that's when we went up to the postnatal ward, and I knew I wasn't going to be allowed out that day. I knew I'd have to stay in, which was fine. And I kind of called Alfie and Holly on FaceTime, and I was like, yeah, Harry's fine. And they were really excited and they couldn't wait to meet him. The next day, that's when I kind of wanted to go home. I was ready to go home and see my kids and be all excited for our new little baby. And that's when a midwife came to see me just to check up on me and see how I was doing. And that's when she said to me, I'm not too happy about his grunting. And he was doing this slight like grunt when he was like mainly sleeping. It was kind of like a And at the time I thought it was just kind of like a baby thing, and perhaps it's just how he kind of settled himself. I wasn't overly concerned. But that's when she said to me that that can be a sign of very low blood sugar. I didn't really know the serious of that at the time, but that's when I kind of googled it and kind of read a lot of things, and it is very, very serious if your baby's got low blood sugar. So that's when they said they want me to go down to the intensive care unit with him to have some blood sugars and just to kind of check him over and see if he's okay, because they didn't really like the grunting and he seemed to kind of jolt a lot. A lot of babies do jolt. If there's like a sudden noise, they'll go like this, but he was doing it quite regularly and just quite out of the blue, sporadically. He was doing that. So we went to the intensive care unit where they checked him over, and at one point they thought he was fitting and they were very concerned. He had his blood sugar, and that's when it went from, I think he had very, very low, I think it was about 4 or even lower than that, very, very low. They gave him his blood sugar, and luckily over time that was going up, but that's when they wanted to examine him more because he was jolting and just seemed very odd, like behaviour for a new baby. He wasn't very settled at all. So we went to the intensive care unit, and that's when they said to me that they're going to tube feed him. I can't remember what it was for. It's all kind of blanked now, 4 months on, nearly 5 months on. He was given a feeding tube and I had to express some milk for him. I was sat on this big like machine. They are brilliant though, the hospital machine. And that's when they fed him for a tube, and that's when they said they really want to examine him overnight and they want him to stay in the intensive care unit. And that's when I called my partner at the time, and I was in a bit of a panic thinking, what's wrong with him? I don't understand, like why do they want to keep him in? It seemed very like at the time it was kind of like, I thought, oh, they're, you know, over exaggerating about this tiniest thing because he was grunting. Turns out they actually thought he had meningitis in his brain, and this was extremely scary. Obviously meningitis isn't a nice thing for babies to get. That's when they did like a lot of blood tests, regular obs all the time. He was never ever left alone, bless him. He was always prodded and pricked with everything by all these different nurses. He had a lumbar puncture because they obviously needed to check his spinal fluid to see if the meningitis was going into his brain, if he had it. And he also had like a chest x-ray, he had a brain scan, and he was also, because of the jolting, they thought he was having like fits. And even now he kind of jolts his leg, and I think we've just kind of figured it's kind of like a baby thing. But he had like these little needles in his head, and he looked, oh, bless his heart. It makes me so sad thinking how like just his first few days of life were just being prodded and pricked and hurt, and he didn't understand why, and it was just really sad. But luckily they didn't find any like meningitis or anything like that. The lumbar puncture came back absolutely fine. But what they did find out is that he had an infection, and we believe this is due to the fluid that he swallowed. But yeah, he just had an infection. We were in a hospital for 8 days. I think it got to the 5th or 6th day, and that's when I contacted the NICU like support people, and I said, look, like I'm on a ward with lots of mothers, lots of new babies. My baby's currently downstairs getting prodded and pricked with all different things, and I'm around a ton of babies crying upstairs on a postnatal ward. I said, how can this be fair? It's not right for me to be around like all the bounty people coming in and be like, oh, would you like a picture of your baby? Well, my baby was downstairs, you know, preparing for a lumbar puncture because he was really poorly. So I just like, I had a bit of a meltdown in there. When he came back up to me, I hadn't slept in days. I was so exhausted because I was pumping like every 2 hours when he was still downstairs, taking the milk down, and come visit him during the night and stuff like that. And that's when they moved me to my own special ward, a room with a lovely view, and it was massive. I had an ensuite, and it was just the perfect time I needed to kind of regain my energy again before I went home to my kids. And anyone who knows on postnatal wards, they are extremely noisy, but I just had a bit of a meltdown and I had a breakdown, and these midwives had to console me and said, we're going to do everything we can to get you your own separate room. And the thing is, I don't mind postnatal wards. I think they're really chatty. I love looking at other babies. But I think it got to the point where every time I'd lay my head down, a baby would cry, and I was trying to get some sleep because I had to wake up every 2 hours anyway to be able to pump milk for my own baby. So I wanted to get enough rest as possible. And then during the day I couldn't really sleep because it's quite light in the rooms, and Alfie and Holly would come and visit me as well, so I couldn't really sleep and catch up with any sleep during the day. But yes, then I moved on to a nice little room where I had Harry back with me, and it was lovely. And then on the 8th day we finally returned home. 8 whole days is just absolute madness, but that's what we did, and we thankfully got through it. I somehow did, I really don't know. And that day we came home, my sister was waiting for me to come see Harry, and it was just absolutely lovely. I remember sitting down on my sofa with my dressing gown on with a coffee, and I thought, oh, this is the life, I love it. So that is my labour and delivery story with my baby Harry, or Barry as I call him. He's still absolutely lovely, and I'll probably do an update on him soon, because he's coming up to 5 months now, which in another month's time he'll be weaning. So I'm going to do another video about all about that and how to wean a baby and things like that, so stay tuned. mind. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, because I post up 3 videos per week, usually Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. It can kind of change because also I've got 3 children, who can blame me, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.